The city is on the way to a pilot program for body cameras to be worn by the Boston Police. In a recent series of meetings, there have been many questions about the program, whether about the use of the cameras or access to the resulting video. Our guest played a key role in those meetings, and in oversight by the Boston City Council, we'd like to welcome the councilor from District 4 and chair of the Council Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, Andrea Campbell. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me today. It's great to be back.
First of all, talk about, I guess, the foundation for these cameras. Aside from all this technological change, what do you see is the main thing that's driving the need for these cameras?
Well, I think the conversation related to for body cameras came out of the conversation related to police misconduct. Some of it obviously referencing incidents that happened nationally, and there were folks here who saw that some other municipalities and other states across the country were using body cameras, I think, as a tool to respond to that. And so, of course, naturally, you look to where you live, the city of Boston, to see if this could be an effective tool here to address any police misconduct or to be used for other purposes.
Because one of the challenges here to running an experiment is that, you know, there's no language in the police union contracts about doing this. So doesn't that make it pretty difficult to have a valid cross-section of officers using this?
I think right now there is that challenge. The pilot program, which is going to be 6 months long and deploy 100 cameras, is a voluntary program. So one of the things that's been coming up related out of the community meetings, but also at the council, is the voluntary nature of the pilot program. This was decided on before I joined the council in January, and so this is what we're stuck with. So my goal is to make sure that we do it the best way we can. I think there are some municipalities that have done this. I was just speaking with the chief of police in Methuen, who did a pilot program out there, and I think there are some best practices that we could use right here in the city of Boston to make sure we have the best pilot program possible.
Any examples of things to do or to avoid?
So I think one is some people use the term voluntold, which is this idea of having a captain or a superintendent talk to officers, have a conversation with those who might be interested in using body cameras as a tool, and to really pull from folks who don't just have a good record on paper, to pull from folks who maybe have a couple of questionable actions on their record, and to maybe say, you're going to do it, and let's go from there. I think simultaneously while we're having these community meetings on policy, Commissioner Evans, the mayor, are having conversations with the union, and I hope they're going well. Obviously, as a council, we're not privy to those conversations, but we're going to do our part in making sure that we have the best pilot program.
Well, turning to the feelings of civilians, we are always really glad when we can see something, you know, on video that shows what really happened. On the other hand, we like our privacy too. So yes. How do you have both of those?
So I think ACLU put out a model policy, and here's an organization that prides itself on policy and protections of people's privacy. I think the fact that they've come around to say body cameras are an effective tool for community policing is a good thing. So they have a model, and we have seen other models where they put in language related to privacy. What's been really fantastic about the community meetings that we held in Dorchester, Rosendale, and Charlestown is to go through specific scenarios so that when we develop a policy, we can actually carve out exceptions. So for example, officers entering someone's home, if it's a domestic violence incident or something involving a minor, carving out exceptions for those incidents. Also, looking at when an officer comes to a home and comes to the door or the threshold of a home, having the camera in default be off versus on, and making sure they ask for consent before entering a home. So these community meetings have been helpful in helping us think about how we shape privacy issues and shape the policy to address them. Because
what you also have in police department are some special units. Some of them work undercover, and some of them very often, they're much more likely to run into somebody who's armed. What about them?
So this is a conversation we're still having, and I'm telling folks in the community a policy has not been defined yet. There are still a lot of unanswered questions, and one is what units in BPD will use these cameras. Some have said, and I think some people in BPD have said, everyone should use them. So the question is, if we ask undercover officers to use these cameras, how can they use them practically? Where do they put them? So I'm not sure if this is going to work now, but it's something that everyone's thinking about and hasn't been decided just yet.
Well, this is an experiment, and I guess the road is going to be up to where we have maybe a draft plan, and then what, you come back and get some more reactions to that?
Absolutely. I think with any policy, it is extremely important that we go out into community first. We hear from community what they think, and we take those thoughts and ideas back to inform how we shape that policy. Then we come up with a policy, and we bring that back, and we have feedback and a back and forth about how we should alter it, amend it, before we come up with something permanent. But for everything we put in the policy, my goal is to have an explanation as to why it's there. And if we didn't include something, also an explanation as to why we didn't include it now.
What about the benefits from this? Because there is going to be some expense involved. So, you know, there are some people out there, you know, even Commissioner Evans, he's saying, well, is it really worth this money? We could spend that money on something else.
So I applaud the mayor. He's put aside $500,000 in the budget specifically for the pilot program. It looks like by all accounting measures that we do not need the entire $500,000. So it's looking at not focusing on Commissioner Evans and his perspectives, or even the mayor. It's focusing on the fact that we have this pilot program, we're going to do it, and making sure that we get it right. And I remind folks that at the end of the day, some people weren't for these tools, which have been demonstrated to actually be effective, and technology, as we all know, is a wave of the future. So I think people power, there is power in that, and the commissioner obviously came around. And I want to applaud the commissioner. He put together this social justice task force, a group of community-based leaders to inform him. He's acknowledged that he does not know everything, and he's put together folks who don't share his perspectives, which I think is a really great idea. And so it's a robust conversation we're going to continue to have. I just want to make sure we pull in community.
Well, speaking of conversations, you're the new city councilor, and you've got some new ways to get talking to people.
Absolutely. So I was sworn in January. We just started month 5. I have 5 incredible team members, and engagement is the key. So we opened a district office in Fields Corner in Dorchester as another space for residents to engage with us outside of just City Hall. We put out a newsletter. We put out council notes. We put out things and tools to hopefully increase the number of folks engaged with our office.
Oh, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
City Councilor Andrea Campbell. In a moment, research on highway pollution and neighborhood health. But first, this message.